We are live today. Man, we are going live early with a special emergency breaking news broadcast here on this lovely Friday, June 27th, Friday morning, 2025. Thank you all very much for tuning into the broadcast today, folks. We have some breaking news. This is some of the best news that we have gotten in months. Today, the United States Supreme Court issued a ruling. I'm trying to find that page right here. Supreme Court showdown, more like a Supreme Court shutdown. In a highly anticipated decision, the United States Supreme Court justices ruled in a 6-3 decision, mind you, 6-3, to limit the power of the federal judiciary, limiting their capacity to block presidential orders by issuing these nationally sweeping universal injunctions. Folks, as you know, as we've been talking about, gosh, we have been talking about this for 6 months. I've made 20 videos about this. Every single time President Trump has tried to issue an executive order or do like anything, anytime he's tried to use the bathroom, there has been a radically progressive federal judge that has said, actually, you're not allowed to use the bathroom, President Trump. You have to ask us to use the bathroom, or whatever he's trying to do. There have been a series of God knows how many, we're going to go through it today, of these executive orders, these executive actions that are granted to him and vested to him by the U.S. Constitution. Well, these federal judges, these radically progressive federal judges have decided, well, we're not going to let you do that. We're going to overstep our judicial bounds in the federal courts, and we're going to shut all of it down. Well, guess what? A lot of this has gone up to the Supreme Court, individual cases, and Trump has won 95% of all of the individual cases. Well, it got so bad that the Supreme Court has just come out and said, listen, actually, seems like all of these nationally sweeping universal injunctions are not allowed. It seems like you guys are overstepping your judicial judicial boundaries. So, folks, there is a lot of drama involved in this. We have a scathing write-up. Where is it? From Amy Coney Barrett. Folks, I never thought I would say this. Amy Coney Barrett, you guys are, to some degree, has been vindicated. Okay, I think a lot of us are not the biggest fans of Amy Coney Barrett. She has ruled against Trump on numerous cases here, but she actually came out today. She sided on the, what I'll call the right side of history. Not that she was needed anyway, because you can see this is 6-3. Even if she hopped over, wouldn't have mattered. But anyway, so not only did she vote alongside limiting the power of the federal judiciary, but also she is the one that wrote up this very long write-up. She went nuclear. She wrote a scathing write-up, particularly aimed at Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court Ketanji Brown Jackson, Joe Biden's DEI Supreme Court justice, and she obliterated her. Amy Coney Barrett obliterated Ketanji Brown Jackson. We're going to look at that here pretty soon, folks. We have a lot to talk about today. But first off, I decided to go live a little bit earlier than I had planned on because President Trump is going to be holding an emergency press briefing now. It's supposed to have happened 11 minutes ago. So President Trump is going to come out and talk about this entire situation live any second. And so that's kind of what we're waiting for. And then after we hear from President Trump himself, the man of the hour, who is finally, his shackles have been broken. Finally, he is able to actually do his job, the job we elected him to do. Finally, anyway, he's going to come out and he's going to address this entire situation. Now, he did release a Truth Social post right here. I want to read with you guys just about a half hour ago. Take a look. He said, giant win in the United States Supreme Court. Even the birthright citizenship hoax has been indirectly hit hard. Now, folks, if you remember, one of President Trump's executive orders was shutting down birthright citizenship. So check this out. All of these executive orders that President Trump has pushed through over the last 6 months, almost all of them have been blocked by this radically progressive federal judiciary. Well, the Supreme Court has just come in and said, well, actually, all of those rulings from the radically progressive federal judiciary, those rulings that have overstepped their bounds, all of those are now null and void. Okay, what does that mean? That means that every single one of President Trump's executive orders that has been shut down over the last 6 months are now, ergo, in full effect. Okay, one such executive order is birthright citizenship. So the Supreme Court didn't come out and explicitly say birthright citizenship is unconstitutional. What they did say is the radically progressive federal judiciary has no right to overstep their bounds and impede on the president, meaning his ban on birthright citizenship via executive order is now in full effect. Could that change a year from now or something? Yeah, sure. That we could have a more isolated Supreme Court ruling specifically on birthright citizenship. But that's not what happened today. What happened today is the Supreme Court came out and said, listen, a lot of these executive orders, that's for us to decide, not the radically progressive federal judiciary. You guys are drastically and egregiously overstepping your bounds. Okay, so this is a massive win. President Trump goes on to say, let me just restart this here. He says, it had to do with the babies of slaves, same year, talking about birthright citizenship, not the scamming of our immigration process. Congratulations to Attorney General Pam Bondi, Solicitor General John Sauer, and the entire Department of Justice. News conference at the White House at 11:30 a.m. EST. That is why we are live here right now today, folks. I have a lot of other stuff I want to dive into this with you guys, but I'm a little bit hesitant to start that yet because we know President Trump is going to come out here any second. Right now, he's 14 minutes late. Hey, we are on the President Trump timeline. Okay, so if he says 11:30, that might be 11:45 maybe. But folks, I'm telling you guys, this is a massive day. President Trump can finally start doing his job without being impeded by all of these radically progressive federal judges. This is going to take place any second now. He's going to come out and directly talk about all of this. How long is his speech going to be? Half hour, 10 minutes? I don't know. But we have a lot of other stuff to talk about. This is a very, very big deal. Folks, I have a list over here. I put together a list before I went live of all of his Supreme Court, of all of President Trump's executive orders that he issued over the last 6 months that got shut down by the radically progressive federal judiciary that are now in full and total effect. This is massive. Our country is about to change big time. And President Trump is going to come out and talk about this any second. Now, let me pop out my live chat. Hey, I haven't even taken a look at my live chat. I've just been screaming into the void. Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in today. President Trump is going to step out onto the stage any second now. Oh, folks, you know the radical progressives are going to be pissed off today. You know they are not happy about this. I'm going to try to find a clip for you. I have used this clip a couple times in some of my YouTube videos, and I want to show this to you folks right now. This is the problem. I want to play this right now. Take a look.
There are those who believe that we are in real time living through an assault on the constitutional order. Do you believe that we are in a constitutional crisis right now?
Yes, our democracy is at risk because Donald Trump shows that he wishes to violate the laws in many, many different ways. The good news here is we did put 235 judges, progressive judges, judges not under the control of Trump last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time.
Folks, this is Chuck Schumer. This is everybody's favorite Palestinian Senate representative, Senator Chuck Schumer. This is him just a couple months ago, 4 months ago, explicitly admitting that they, in the last 12 months, put 235 radically progressive federal judges in their position for the sole and exclusive purpose of undermining and subverting President Trump. They shopped around before they appointed a judge. This is in the last year of Joe Biden's presidential term. They said, listen, hey, judge, do you promise if President Trump wins the election, do you promise to undermine and subvert President Trump every single thing he does? Yes, you do. All right, you're hired. Any sort of judicial impartiality, any sort of even attempt or effort to remain unbiased while serving as a federal judge, they don't want that. Oh, here we go. They were shopping for judges specifically to undermine President Trump. Here's President Trump himself.
Amazing decision, one that we're very happy about. This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation.
Yes, they have.
In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades, and we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century.
That is right.
Together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century. Me. I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple. I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts, and Justices Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people. Thanks for this decision, and thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country
That is right.
on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants, because this is a very important decision. This is a decision that covers a tremendous amount of territory. But I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant. It's a giant. And they should be very proud, and our country should be very proud of the Supreme Court today. And with that, I'd like you to listen to the words of Pam Bondi. She's an incredible Attorney General. We're very proud of her. And as you know, Todd Blanche is with us, and we have so many others that worked on this case and other cases. And I think they're doing a great job. Pam, please say a few words.
Pamela Bondi.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for fighting for all Americans. Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer. Today, in the 6-3 opinion, Justice Barrett correctly holds that the district court lacks authority to enter nationwide or universal injunctions. These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. Active liberal justices Judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policies.
Yes, they
To
have.
put this in perspective, there are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that. 94 districts. And 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have blocked our policies from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other issues. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. No longer. No longer. And on immigration, on a side note, today marks 2,711 arrests on these terrorists and these gangs. Total arrest today with HSI
Just today.
investigations. And thank you, Stephen
It's only
Miller.
noon.
Thank you to Homeland Security.
The day's just
Thank
getting
you
going.
to everyone working hand in hand with the FBI on all of these transnational gangs. TDA has been a huge terror to our country, as well as MS-13, as well as Sinaloa cartels. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have allowed district court judges to be emperors. They vetoed all of President Trump's power, and they cannot do that. This has been a bipartisan problem that has lasted 5 presidential terms, 5 different presidents, and it has ended today. We will continue to fight for President Trump's policies. I want to thank the Office of White House Counsel, Dave Warrington. You and your staff have been incredible. Our Solicitor General's office, John Sowers, Sarah Harris, and Todd Blanche and Emil Bovey. Todd's going to say a few words because we've had another major ruling today on transgender books and some other great wins
This is
that
the
we've
best
had.
day ever.
But no longer will they have this power
This
in our
is huge.
country. It is the president's authority under his executive branch to do everything to fight for the American people, and he will continue to do that. That's why he was overwhelmingly elected. Thank you.
That's right. That's true.
Thank you. Yeah, today's a great day for the rule of law. It's a great day for the Justice Department, and it's one that's been a long time coming, and one that every American should have been waiting for with bated breath. And so I echo what the President said and Attorney General Bondi, that the Supreme Court did a great thing today, not only for this administration, but for every American in this country. If not for the injunctions case, we would be here talking about another great decision that came down today, the trans books case, which restores parents' rights to decide their child's education. Seems like a basic idea, but it took the Supreme Court to set the record straight, and we thank them for that. And now that ruling allows parents to opt out of dangerous trans ideology and make the decisions for their children that they believe is correct. And so we thank the Supreme Court for that. There's been multiple decisions over the past several weeks that just show why this nationwide injunction ban had to happen. For example, what I mean by that is local district court judges issuing decisions that are clearly contrary to law just because they don't like the policy of President Trump. And when it gets to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court has to correct it. But that takes time.
It's a good day.
The Attorney General thanked our lawyers, and I'll do it again. Our lawyers are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to fight these injunctions and to emergency appeals, emergency stays, going back to the district court judge, asking them to change their view. And so their hard work is really paying off today, but over the past few weeks. We had a stay of an order that prevented DHS from moving aliens to a third country. We had a stay of an order that stopped the Department of Defense from implementing military readiness, the EO that President Trump signed. We had another stay of an order forcing reinstatement of fired executive branch employees entirely within the President and Article 2, his right to do. We had a stay of, as you all know, of numerous DOJ cases. And again, every one of those stays requires a tremendous amount of work and effort by the lawyers and parties involved, and they should be doing other work. They should be doing the work that the President and this administration demands and has a right to demand, and not fighting these local judges who don't make decisions based on the law.
Folks,
they make decisions because they just simply don't agree with the administration's decision about a policy, and that's wrong. Thank you.
We have a lot to talk about today, okay?
Any questions?
Questions?
Yes, for Pam, please.
Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Attorney General. So as you know, the Supreme Court did not rule on the underlying constitutionality of the President's birthright citizenship order. So what is the plan now? Are you going to try to implement the EO just in states where there isn't a legal challenge?
Yes, so birthright citizenship will be decided in October in the next session by the Supreme Court, unless it comes down in the next few minutes. I guess it could come down. I think they're still deliberating right now on some cases. As you heard, we just got transgender books, which is a huge win. But most likely, that will be decided in October in the next session. However, it
But for the
indirectly
time being,
impacts
it's
us
in effect.
because, as you correctly pointed out, if there's a birthright citizenship case in Oregon, it will only affect the plaintiff in Oregon, not the entire country. So yes, it's indirectly, but that's pending litigation, and we're waiting on that in the next term.
And how concerned are you that the Supreme Court will come back and determine that the executive order is unconstitutional?
Oh, we're very confident in the Supreme Court. But again, it's pending litigation, and that will directly
Hear that?
be determined in October. But it indirectly impacts every case in this country, and we're thrilled with their decision today. Peter.
Madam Attorney General, thank you for being here to take our questions. A couple questions to the both of you. The EO had a 30-day grace period before it goes into effect. Is there any thought about trying to make it effective immediately within that period of time?
We're going to follow the law. We're going to make those decisions, and we're going to do what's right in the bounds of the law.
And then the DOJ didn't ask the justices to rule on the merits of the birthright citizenship ban. Just for explanation purposes, why?
Sure, because that's going to come down in October in the separate. This was huge because it's indirectly impacted
Michael,
today.
Lenny,
As I said,
Tiger
it's
Tanker.
now it's case by case. Let me reiterate, of the 35 of the 40 nationwide injunctions filed against this president, against his executive authority as President of the United States, 35 of them came from Maryland, D.C., Massachusetts, California, Washington. I mean, that's crazy. These 5 districts. So yes, it indirectly impacts us. It will be a separate decision in October.
And to be
Next
clear,
question.
if the
Thank
Supreme
you,
Court-
Mr. President. A question for you, sir. Do you believe this ends the power of the lower court judges to stop your agenda? Do you see this as a full green light for your
Destroy
agenda
them.
going forward?
Well, you'd
Destroy
have to
them.
really speak to the lawyers about that, but this is really also a decision based on common sense. It didn't work the other way. It was a disaster where somebody from a certain location in a very liberal state or a liberal judge or a liberal group of judges could tie up a whole country for years because their decision would sometimes take years to overturn. We've overturned many of the decisions, but it would take years to do it. And we have to act quickly when it comes to illegal immigration. We have murderers, killers, we have drug dealers,
Folks.
we have what they've allowed to come into our country. Should never be forgotten. It should never be forgotten what they've done to our country. And we have to be able to act very quickly, and we're going to do that. Thank
And
you.
then Justice Amy Coney Barrett, sir, I know that you praised her and her opinion here in this case.
We're gonna
She
read
has
that today.
taken some heat, though, from some of your supporters who have labeled her weak, a squishy, a rattled law professor. What is your take on that?
I don't
Do you
know
think?
about that. I just have great respect for her. I always have. And her decision was brilliantly written today, from all accounts. Yeah.
Transgender
Thank you,
Mr. President, what would you say to Americans who fear that this is more and more concentration of power in the White House and the executive?
Well, this really
power?
brings
Oh,
back the
come on.
Constitution. This is what it's all about. And this is really the opposite of that. I mean, the question is fine, but it's the opposite. The Constitution has been brought back.
Thank you so much, President Trump. Illegal crossings in the border are 0 now.
0. Does everyone hear that? 0.
Trump
2028!
Do you intend, President
That's
Trump,
a good one, dude.
Who's that guy? I like him. He's working the cameras.
with this new reality, President Trump, in the border, do you intend to engage personally with leaders from
Folks, we have a lot to
South
talk about
America,
after
not
this.
only
There-
Central America, in
there
order
is a
to
lot
tackle
going
the
on
today.
situation
And we're gonna go through all of it, okay?
Have a perspective of meeting some presidents from South America, as Brazil, for example.
Well, you see, as an example, not South America, but NATO over the weekend.
Yeah.
They have great respect for our country now. They did things that nobody thought was possible. They took funding from 2% to 5%. Nobody thought they'd ever pay the 2%, and now they're paying the 5%. It's over $1 trillion more a year. Think of that, $1 trillion. Nobody thought that could happen. That's a different group of people, different countries. But we get along with a lot of countries. We are respected again. Our country, the U.S., is respected again. Was not respected 6 months ago, I can tell you.
We ask about the big beautiful bill, sir?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. President, you have a deadline coming up on trade in 2 weeks. Which countries, if
On
any,
what?
on trade, on tariffs,
Yeah.
sir? Which countries, if any, are close to agreements with the administration?
Well, that's an interesting question. We've made a deal with China. We've made a deal with probably 4 or 5 different countries. With the UK, it was a great deal for
Europe
both.
soon.
And we're in the process of making some others. But ultimately, in fact, Scott is here, and Howard Lutnick, these two guys have been doing an incredible job, and the people that work with them have been doing an incredible job. But, you know, we have 200 countries, you could say 200 countries plus. We can't do that. So at a certain point over the next week and a half or so, or maybe before, we're going to send out a letter. We talked to many of the countries, and we're just going to tell them what they have to pay to do business in the United States. And it's going to go very quickly. But some of the bigger countries, so India, I think we're going to reach a deal where we have the right to go in and trade. Right now it's restricted. You can't walk in there. You can't even think about it. We're looking to get a full trade barrier dropping, which is unthinkable. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen. But as of this moment, we've agreed to that, go into Indian trade. We're going to be trading in China. That's going to come a little bit down the road, but we're going to be trading in China. We have a lot of great things going, and we're getting along with countries, but some will be disappointed because they're going to have to pay tariffs. And we've taken in already hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. No inflation. The only problem we have is we have a Fed guy that doesn't understand what's happening, and it would be great if he'd lower the rate because we'd be able to borrow a lot cheaper. Yeah, go ahead, please. Why don't we keep it on this subject? This is such a big subject. You know what? Trade is so big, but this, I don't know, in a certain way, this might be bigger than trade.
Yeah, listen, let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling.
I think this is bigger than trade. Yes, please, go ahead.
I was wondering, though, if you could...
Go ahead.
Sir, on the transgender ruling, the Supreme Court ruling that parents with religious objections can pull their kids out of public school lessons that use LGBTQ materials.
That's right.
Pam brought it up. Your reaction to that ruling today, sir?
I think the ruling was a great ruling, and I think it's a great ruling for parents. It's really a ruling for parents. They lost control of the schools. They lost control of their child. And this is a tremendous victory for parents. And I'm not surprised by it, but I am surprised that it went this far. It took us to bring life back to normal. So it's wonderful. It's parental. And I kept saying, we will give you back your parental rights. They were taken away, and this is a tremendous victory for parents. Yeah.
Mr. President, if you look at the back at the last week, it's been extraordinary in terms of the action in the Middle East. You were at The Hague.
I'm wondering now, hell of a week, hasn't it?
I'm wondering now if you believe that Iran. I'm wondering now, sir, if you believe that Iran has given up its long history of ambitions with nuclear weapons, or what you would like to see from them to prove that they do, and what type of meetings is your administration looking for next week with Iran?
So Iran wants to meet. As you know, their sites were obliterated. They're very evil nuclear sites. They were, now has been proven. We had some fake news for a little while. The same people that covered the Hunter Biden laptop was from Russia. The same people that did 3 or 4 other Russia hoax. No, wait, just listen. They came up with something that delayed the credit that our great pilots and these great what talent that was, and they hit it right down in the spot. 52,000 feet. Think of this dark, no moon, you couldn't see a thing, and they hit the refrigerator door, as they say. That's the size of a target, and overwhelmingly, and it's amazing what was done. We're the only ones that could have done it, and we took out the 2 of the other sites also. In addition to that, we finished them off. That was a very evil intention. I believe that, and again, time will tell, but I don't believe that they're going to go back into nuclear anytime soon. They spent over $1 trillion on nuclear, and they never got it together. And nothing was moved from the site, by the way. To do that is very dangerous. It's very, very heavy material. Those cars were most likely the cars of masons because they were pouring concrete at the top, at the hatch, as you know, the hatch going into the nuclear site. They wanted to reinforce it, and they had some masons there pouring concrete. By the way, that concrete was obliterated. It hit exactly at the concrete. It was, I don't think it had a chance to dry. but everything's down there. It's under millions of tons of rock. Please. Yes.
Your administration has said that El Salvador is one of the safest countries in the hemisphere. So why haven't you?
Okay, whatever. Listen, we're going to let this play out, but I want to say real quick, folks, that we have so much media to go through once this is done. Everybody is talking about this. We have new information, breaking new information about this. We have total liberal, radical, progressive meltdown that we're going to cover. Today's going to be a wild day.
They have to go there. They become very nice people. They become very nice people. It's a tough system, but it's a brilliant system, and it's a system done by a very, very good leader. We'll talk about El Salvador. A lot of respect. Yeah, please.
Thank you. A question for you, and then a question for the Attorney General. As you go into negotiations and talks with Iran, are you demanding not only that there would be no uranium production inside of Iran, but also that Iran would turn over all existing stockpiles of uranium?
Well, you know, we're a little early for that, but something like that, yeah, we'll do something like that. Let me say that I've been saying for 25 years, even as a civilian, you cannot let them have a nuclear weapon, and that's what happened. It's been obliterated. It would be years before they could ever get going, and I really think it's probably the last thing. They have to recover from a hell of a tough war.
Would you also be demanding that the IAEA have full rights to inspect in Iran?
Or somebody, yeah, or somebody that we respect, including ourselves.
And a question for both the President and the Attorney General. Under birthright citizenship, if this is implemented, who would be tasked with actually vetting citizenship? And how, like, would this be a situation where you have nurses and doctors checking
how every other country does it in the world?
This is all pending litigation. It's going to be decided in October by the Supreme Court, and we'll discuss that after the litigation.
We are like the only country that does this birthright citizenship
thing. Would that baby then
thing.
be an enforcement priority?
The violent criminals in our country are the priority now. Let me put it in perspective. Today marked the 2,711th arrest in our country of TDA members, just TDA. Oh. Everyone in this room agrees they are one of the most violent criminal organizations in the world. And the Biden administration let them walk into our country for the last 4 years. 2,711 of them today have been arrested in our country. That is the priority of Donald Trump. That is the priority of this country, of Homeland Security, of all of our lawyers, of FBI. That's the priority. That will be discussed in October when the Supreme Court hopefully rules in our favor, and we're very confident of that. But you should all feel safer now that President Trump can deport all of these gangs, and not one district court judge can think they're an emperor over this.
You know what this means, folks? The Alien Enemies Act is a go. He tried to invoke it. A radically progressive federal judge shot it down. Folks, the Alien Enemies Act is in full effect.
Used birthright citizenship, some of the worst people, some of the cartels, to get people into our country, just so you know. And again, I say, if you look at the end of the Civil War, the 1800s, it was a very turbulent time. If you take the end day, was it 1869 or whatever? But you take that exact day, that's when the case was filed. And the case ended shortly thereafter. This had to do with the babies of slaves, very, very obviously. And I think we're going to win. People didn't, I don't think they went about discussing it right. I came along and we looked and we said, wait a minute, this is wrong. We've been looking at birthright citizenship wrong for years, but they've used it. The cartels have used birthright citizenship to get very bad people in, and what Pam's doing and what Todd and everybody else, what they're doing at DOJ and all over, FBI, ICE, Border Patrol, these are incredible people. They're trying to keep our country safe, and they don't want to have people come in. This is just another way that they get illegal immigrants into our country, and in some cases, very, very bad ones. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your tax bill, if I could for a moment, senators are racing to rewrite parts of it right now after the Senate parliamentarian ruled that sections of it were outside of the process that they're using to get this through. Do you think that senators should respect the decisions of the parliamentarian? And what have you personally done in the last 48 hours to try and get Republican senators who are against the bill to a yes?
Well, look, it's a great bill. It's a massive tax cut. If it's not approved, your taxes will go up by 68%. Think of that, 68, a record, the highest in the history. The Democrats won't approve it only because politically it's so good for the Republicans. The Democrats aren't approving it. But think of what they're not approving. They're not approving border security. We've done a great job at the border, but we have to add some wall. We have to do, various things. We have no money for that. We have no money for the border. We have no money for so many things. But if the Democrats, it'd be interesting to see if we get any Democrat votes. We should. If I were a Democrat, I would absolutely, maybe Fetterman, because he seems to be the most sensible one lately. If I were a Democrat, I would vote for this bill all day long because it's tax cuts and so many other things that are common sense. They're basic things. I think they're doing fine. The parliamentarian's been a little difficult. And I would say that I disagree with the parliamentarian on some things, and on other ways he's been fine. But we'll have to see. It's a big issue. I will tell you this: if that bill doesn't pass, the country will get a 68% tax increase. So think of this: you're a Democrat and you vote against it. That means you're voting in favor, because essentially you're voting in favor of the largest tax hike in the history of our country. And you can't do that. In addition, we're cutting costs by $1.7 trillion, and it won't affect anybody. It's just fraud, waste, and abuse.
Mr. President, a leading global economist just did a 180 and says your tariff plan, you may have outsmarted everybody with it. What is your message?
Imagine that.
I love this. I love this question. This
Imagine
is the favorite.
that.
This is the best question I've ever been asked, because I've been going through abuse for years on this. Because as you know, we're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, no inflation whatsoever.
But Mr. President, what is your message to critics who think your tariff plan will cause a recession?
I think they should go back to business school. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. I mean, we're taking in billions and billions of dollars from China and a lot of other countries. We took in, I had a call from somebody in the House and a high official. Sir, we have a problem. We don't know what to do. The books are a mess. I said, what do you mean by the books? The books, the money coming in. It's so terrible. I figured, oh boy, what's this? I don't like this question. I said, so what seems, there's so much money coming in, and there must be some kind of an accounting mistake, because we have hundreds of billions of dollars more money than we thought. I said, do me a favor, go check call me back. You have to call me back. Check the tariff column. He calls me back 2 hours later, says, you're right. We took in $88 billion in tariffs. They have so much money coming in. But more important than the money coming in, we have companies coming in, factories coming in, auto plants being built. AI is being built here instead of being built all over Europe and Asia. We have all of it. We have over $15 trillion, just about, Scott. I think we're right about that number. We went to Saudi Arabia. We went to Qatar, we went to UAE, very smart people, very smart leaders, great leaders, and we took in $5.1 trillion just there without the tariffs. I mean, they also liked a thing called November 5th, November 6th, and November 7th. That was a very good...
Okay, folks, we have emergency breaking news. Judge Boasberg has ruled that the Supreme Court is unconstitutional. No, I'm kidding. How funny would that be, though?
And they like
there is a liberal meltdown.
Tariffs. I had Texas
right this
Instruments
moment,
come in the other day.
We're going to talk about it
company,
soon.
And he said, we're putting in $60 billion into new plants and new equipment, new everything. Sir, you're going to keep the tariffs, aren't you? Because if I ever took the tariffs off, and we are going to absolutely keep it. And they're worried that somebody that, like this communist from New York, someday gets elected. I can't believe that's happening. That's a terrible thing for our country, by the way. He's a communist. We're going to go to a communistic state. That's so bad for New York. But the rest of the country is revolting against it. But if somebody got elected, they're afraid that if this was taken off, well, we're going to guarantee it's never going to be taken off. And again, we're taking in think of this, hundreds of billions of dollars. And they were all confused because they've never seen this before. You know, it's always the other way. We don't have enough money. So much money is coming in at levels that nobody's ever seen. But most importantly, we have factories being built, car plants being built, companies moving to our country like never before. If you look at 15 trillion, and that's only in a few months. You know, I haven't been here that long. Presidents, like the last one, was a disaster. He's the worst president in the history of our country, by the way. What he did on our border can never, ever be forgotten. To me, that's the worst of all the things. And he's done some terrible things, grossly incompetent. Nobody knew it was him, because I don't think it was him. I think it was whoever was controlling the auto pen. But our country is doing great. And those leaders and other leaders, I just left, as you know, a large group of the most highly respected people. And that includes
Who
big countries.
appointed Ketanji Brown Jackson
big
again? Was it
countries.
Biden
When
or
you
the
look
auto
at Germany and France and Spain, although Spain didn't come through, but they will. By the way, guaranteed they will. That was the only country that sort of tried to hold back on putting up the money. But just so you know, they said, it's unbelievable what's happened to the USA. You were a dead country. We didn't respect the country, the leader. You were dead as a doornail. One said to me, you went from being a dead country, you are right now the hottest country anywhere in the world. The whole world is talking about the USA, and everybody wants a part of it, and they're pouring into our country, and you're going to see those numbers. Thank you for that question.
Folks, this Supreme Court ruling is massive. We're going to break this down here pretty soon.
I have a question about trade. Secretary Bessent has said that he hopes tariff deals with major partners will be done by Labor Day. So if some deals are not done by your July 9th deadline, will some countries' tariffs go back up, or will they stay where they are
Well,
now?
there are some countries that are used to ripping us off, to be honest with you. And I don't want to name them, but you sort of can name them. And they're so used to just, taking it billions and billions of, look, we had a trade deficit of more than $1 trillion. Think of a trillion, a trade deficit. That's because nobody cared. We cared a lot when, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariff. We had the greatest economy in history up until now. I think we're going to blow it away. But during my time, and especially prior to COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think we're going to blow it away now based on the kind of numbers that we're seeing. But some countries are very angry because they've been ripping us off for years. They've been making billions and billions of dollars. There was nobody to negotiate with. They could do whatever they want. They charged us tariffs, by the way, at numbers that we've never seen before. And we ended up losing much more than $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion a year on trade. And now they're being met with a force that's far greater than them, and they don't like it. So they're upset because instead of making, $5 billion, they're going to break even. Or they'll make a little bit. I want to be nice. They'll make a little bit. Or we'll make a little bit. It's a big difference. Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead. Red dress.
On the 2020 election, is there any more information on the special prosecutor? So many Americans still have questions about the 2020 election. And speaking of rogue judges, would you consider appointing somebody at DOJ maybe to investigate the judges that allowed for the political persecution of you, your family, and your supporters during the Biden administration?
I love you. Who are you?
I'm Kara from Lindell TV.
Well, it's just a very nice question. And it's not
Rebecca.
a setup. I have no idea who you are,
Thank
but I
you.
appreciate
Thank
that
you.
question. All I can say is we're
And
not
also
here
Man
for that.
Sam.
I hope so. I hope they're doing a thing because that election was rigged and stolen, and we can't allow that to happen.
folks.
A lot of
It's
people
gonna be a
tell
big
me,
day,
sir,
folks."
you just won the greatest election in the history of our country. You won at numbers that won all 7 swing states, won the popular vote, won everything. Sir, go on with your life. And many people that say that, good people, friends of mine, then you have people that say that same thing, go on with your life, but you have to find out what happened because you can't let that happen again. Look at what this lunatic
gonna
did.
keep doing
Look
it.
at what he did. He opened our borders
If they're
to
not
people
punished,
that were
they're just gonna
murderers.
keep doing it.
11,888 to be exact, murderers. And we've captured many of those murderers, and we're bringing them back, or some of them are so dangerous that we don't even want to bring them back. We're afraid they're going to try and come back in. But he allowed people to come into this country, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, that's a mental institution on steroids, people from mental institutions, gang members, drug dealers, people, jails being emptied out into our country. Venezuela emptied out almost its entire prison population into our country. But I don't want to blame them. Many countries have done that. The Congo, we have a great press conference coming up later, and it's the Congo and Rwanda. They were fighting for years, and it was machetes, it was vicious, it was as vicious, people's heads being chopped off. And I have a man who's very good in that part of the world, very smart, and put them together, and we're signing a peace treaty today. First time in many years they're going to have peace. And It's a big deal. You know, we talk about Russia, and we're working that one. President Putin called up and he said, I'd love to help you with Iran. I said, do me a favor. I'll handle Iran. Help me with Russia. We got to get that one settled. And I think something's going to happen there. But we did some great work. India and Pakistan. That was going to be maybe nuclear. We did that. We did a lot of work. I don't know if there's ever been a president that's done much more. Serbia, Kosovo was going to go at it. Going to be a big war. I said, you go at it. There's no trade with the United States. They said, well, maybe we won't go at it. That's what happened with India and Pakistan. I was negotiating with both of them, and I said to Scott, I said to Howard, cancel all deals with India and Pakistan. They're not trading with us because they're in a war. They called back.
There they are, folks.
What do we do? I said, look, you want to have trade with the United States, it's great. But you want to go and start using nuclear weapons on each other, we're not going to allow that. And they both agreed. Both have great leaders. They both agreed not to do it. So we did a lot, but I appreciate that question.
Sir, on peace deals, can I follow up with you? Sir, can I follow up on peace deals?
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you,
please.
Mr.
Orange.
President. Thank you, Mr. President. I was just speaking with Senator Ron Johnson on the One Big Beautiful Bill, and he says he really wants to get to yes for you and get this accomplished.
He does. He's a good man.
But he also said that he needs more time, and he is not certain that the July 4th deadline is
Well,
possible.
then he's not such a good man.
Because there's too much work to
No,
do.
he's a good man. Ron
How
Johnson's
important-
doing a good job. He's very committed. Every Republican senator is committed. And, you know, you could have a couple of grandstanders, in all fairness. You could have somebody else. And it's very dangerous because our country would go from being the most successful country in the world to who knows what happens with a 68%. Think of it, 68% tax increase. That was given by the Democrats because they like high taxes. I don't know what happened. You know, all my life, I'd grow up and I'd watch politicians talking. I'd say, oh, that's fun. And they were always saying, we will cut your taxes. We will cut your tax. I never heard it. They say, we will raise your taxes. And they elect people like this guy in New York that maybe has a chance. I find it hard to believe, but he maybe has a chance. They want to raise your taxes. So they want to see a 68% tax increase.
Mamdani.
That's more money than anybody could afford. You'd go into a depression if that ever happened. So I think there's a lot of pressure to get that approved.
President Trump,
How important is the July 4th deadline to you? If the
It's
default
important. It's not
deadline's
the
not
end
till
all.
August?
It can go longer, but we'd like to get it done by that time, if possible. And look, we have a lot of very committed people, and they feel very strongly about a subjects that you're not even thinking about that are important to Republicans. The problem we have is that it's a great bill. It's a popular bill, but we'll get no Democrats only because they don't want to vote for Trump. If that bill was their bill, oh, they would be so happy. It's so great for our military. It's great for everything. And they would normally vote, but because their hatred of Trump, they have Trump derangement syndrome at levels never seen before. And instead of voting for a tax cut, they're voting for a tax increase of 68%. They're voting to destroy Social Security, destroy Medicare, and destroy Medicaid. And we're voting to make them perfect and to make them better, make them stronger and better. They're going to destroy Medicaid and they're going to destroy Medicare, and Social Security will follow. If you vote for the Democrats, you're dead on those three things.
Sir, on peace deals.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a related subject, many Democrats have said that they are not going to support crypto bills in Congress only because of you and your family's personal crypto ventures. And these votes are in some cases needed to pass. Are you open to the idea of pulling away from your personal crypto ventures
That's what
just
I'm
for the
waiting
next
for
few
here.
years if that helps get these crypto bills passed
Yeah.
in the next few months?
Well, it's a very funny thing, crypto. So I became a fan of crypto, and to me it's an industry. I view it as an industry, and I'm president. And if we didn't have it, China would, or somebody else would, but most likely China. China would love to. And we've dominated that industry. It's a big industry, by the way. In fact, when the stock market went down recently, crypto and Bitcoin and all of that went down much less than anybody else as a group. And we've created a very powerful industry, and that's much more important than anything that we invest in. We invest in it, but really that was an industry that wasn't doing particularly well. I got involved with it a couple of years ago, and before the second term. I got involved before I decided to run. I only decided to run because I saw what was happening, and Biden was incompetent, and the administration was crooked and incompetent. And I was in Bitcoin then, not knowing if I was going to do it a third time. So it's become amazing. I mean, it's the jobs that it produces. And I notice more and more you pay in Bitcoin. I mean, people are saying it takes a lot of pressure off the dollar. And it's a great thing for our country. So I don't care about investing. You know, I have I have kids and they invest in different things. They do believe in it. But I'm president, and what I did do there is build an industry that's very important. And you know, if we didn't have it, China would. Okay.
Sir, Mr. President,
go ahead. With the glasses, gentlemen, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, are you going to cut funds in the sanctuary states, like for instance California? They
Yes,
keep
you
supporting
should.
illegal
Yes, cut them
immigration,
off.
And then these people work under
Yeah, we're
the
giving them a
table.
hard time.
And also, if a foreign policy
I
question.
mean, they don't have a governor in California. They have a man that wants to give away everything to people that nobody's seen before. If we didn't go into Los Angeles with the military, which did a fantastic job, but if we didn't go into Los Angeles bringing in the National Guard, I would have brought the military if it was necessary, because you have to. We have the right to. That was another thing upheld by the Supreme Court. But if we didn't go in with the National Guard and be strong and tough, you wouldn't maybe have Los Angeles. It would be like the rest of California, the rest of Los Angeles. They lost 25,000 houses in a fire. They should have lost none. You know, I sent the water down. I had to break into their water supply because they just refused to do it. They're crazy. There's something wrong with them. They have plenty of water. They don't have droughts or anything. They have we let it come down from the Pacific Northwest. They routed all the water out into the Pacific Ocean for environmental reasons, okay? And now you have 25,000 houses, none of which would have burned down if you had the water. They didn't have water. They didn't have water for the fire pumps. They didn't have water in the sprinkler systems that people put in. So the answer is we're going to work with governors. We're going to work with radical left Democrats and Democrats, and we're going to make it good for everybody. We'll have to stop the crime in those, in the case of the cities, I think I can say just about all cities with heavy crime are run by Democrats. Go ahead.
That is true.
11 lies.
Yeah, with the glasses.
I'm with Iran
Go ahead, yes.
International.
Yeah, no, the man behind you, yeah, please.
President Trump, Anthony Mashak from Anthony, Lebanon. I want to ask you regarding the threats posed by Iran's allies and proxies operating in the U.S. They were threatening your life. So what do you say about that? And regarding the Lebanon, because Hezbollah is as well part of Iran's allies, is there any time frame in Lebanon regarding disarming Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Yeah, Lebanon is a great place with brilliant people. You know, it was known for the professors and doctors and had an incredible history. And hopefully we can bring it back again. I just appointed a friend of mine who's Lebanese, and I didn't know he was Lebanese. I've known him for 20 years, very, very successful man. And I just appointed him. And I said, why would you want that? He says, because I was born there, I was raised there, I love it. I love it so much. I said, you know, it's very dangerous going to Lebanon as ambassador. And he said, that's what they say, but I don't care about danger. I mean, this is a guy that is just a very big business guy. He wants to give up his whole life to go to Lebanon because he believes in it so much. We're with Lebanon all the way. We'll try and straighten it out.
Action.
Threaten my life? Yeah, they have threatened. I get that throbbing feeling every once in a while. Get that throbbing feeling, but you know what? That's okay. This is a dangerous business. What I do is a dangerous business. You know, I tell the story of the car companies and different people and different professions you have. Race car drivers, as an example. 1/10 of 1% die. Bull riders, 1/10 of 1%. That's not a lot, but it's people die. When you're president, it's about 5%.
That is true.
If somebody would have told me that, maybe I wouldn't have run.
That is true.
Okay? This is a very dangerous profession. Yeah, please. By the way, so many questions. Should we keep this going, Pam? Or not?
Whoa. Stop yelling.
This is the opposite of Biden. Biden would take a half a question and he'd leave without answering it. Go ahead.
On Iran.
You tell me when it gets boring. Okay.
If Iran.
Are you from Iran?
No, I'm not from Iran. I'm from the UK. But if the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country
Sure,
again?
without question, absolutely.
Have you had any conversations?
Turned out to be unbelievable. But, our incredible flyers and I call them the shots, these guys are unbelievable. Think, from 52,000 feet, they hit the equivalent of a refrigerator door. They actually hit it right in the center, so it's much smaller than that. And just bomb after bomb going deeper, deeper, blowing up. Incredible, incredible thing. I don't know if you heard the general, he was very impressive. Raisin Cane. He's the one that beat ISIS for me. And he did it in a matter of weeks. And I was told it was going to take 4 or 5 years. And when I got this job, I always said, if I get this job, I'm going to put that guy as the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And Dan Kane, and he, when I heard his name was Raisin, his nickname is Raisin Cane. I said, you got to be kidding. So I liked him right from the beginning, but he knocked out ISIS in a time that nobody ever thought possible. And when this attack was completed and so successful, I said, now I know how you knocked out ISIS so quickly. But we have the best people, we have the best equipment in the world. I rebuilt the military during my 4 years, during my other term. We have the best equipment in the world. The problem is we gave away, a lot of it, but small, relatively speaking. We gave a lot of it away to Afghanistan. Shouldn't have happened. That just shows how incompetent they were. They gave all that equipment away, billions and billions of dollars worth. Shouldn't have happened, but that was small compared to what we have. Now we have a great military with great people. Okay. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, congratulations. A couple of very different questions. One is Rwanda, 1994. As you grew up in New York, we all knew how horrific those attacks were. Congratulations on that treaty. There are talks that perhaps...
That's going to take place today at 3 o'clock in the Oval Office. We're going to have a signing with Rwanda and the Congo. So I'm a little out of my league in that one because I didn't know too much about it. I knew one thing: they were going at it for many years,
bringing peace
with
across
machetes.
the world.
It is one of the worst wars that anyone's ever seen. And I just happened to have somebody that was able to get it settled. I mean, just a brilliant person who is very comfortable in that part of the world. It's a very dangerous part of the world. I said, "Are you uncomfortable there? People are being killed. School children are being raided and killed." And I don't even want to say how, but as viciously as I've ever heard. Are you uncomfortable? No, that's the part of the world that I know. Very comfortable. Was able to get them together and sell it. And not only that, we're getting for the United States a lot of the mineral rights from the Congo as part of it. They're so honored to be
That's
here.
right.
They never thought they'd be coming to. Look, this is a very tough part of the world. They never thought, they were just telling me, they never thought they'd ever be coming to the White House. And they're so honored. And so we're going to give them a great big reception. But that's after many years of fighting. It's a great thing. That's at 3 o'clock, I believe.
Sir, are you concerned at all about secret nuclear sites in Iran? You talked about maybe just
secret nuclear site?
Yes, there might be some of those.
Not really. Can I tell you? They're exhausted. And Israel's exhausted too. And I dealt with both of them. And they both wanted it settled, both of them. And we did a great job, but they're exhausted. The last thing they're thinking about right now is nuclear. You know what they're thinking of? They're thinking about tomorrow, trying to live. It's such a mess. It's such a mess. The place was bombed to hell. And no, I'm not worried about it at all. And I'm putting out a little statement. I'm going to respond to the Ayatollah's statement yesterday that we won the war. Oh, God, we won the war. And I said, look, you're a man of great faith, a man who's highly respected in this country. You have to tell the truth. You got beat to hell. And Israel was beat up too. They were both beat up. And it was a great time to end it. It was quick. They got the hate out. There was a lot of hate, a lot of hate. It would be great if they didn't have that hate. But the last thing they're thinking about is nuclear weapons right now.
Beat to hell.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Iris Howe with NTD Research Media with the Epoch Times. Thank you
Good.
so much for doing this. It's
Sure.
very refreshing for all of us here,
It's a
I
good
believe,
group.
in this room.
It's refreshing.
Very refreshing. Yes, we haven't
Probably.
had this in, for the
I
past
I understand what you mean.
So thank you so much for coming out here.
Other
to talk
than
to
Caroline's done a great job.
Yes, sure.
You're referring to the past administration,
Yes,
not to
yes.
Caroline, right?
Yes. Back to the ruling today, if you don't mind. So you have always talked about winning for the American people.
Right.
How do you think today's ruling will enable you to further deliver for American families and workers across the country, not only when it comes to immigration, but also when it comes to trade, energy, what actions are most eager to move forward
Well, I think
now?
taking power away from these
Thank you.
absolutely crazy radical left judges is a tremendous. This is such a big day. This is such a big day. It's like it's sort of sad because we're doing the signing at 3 o'clock, and this may very well dominate the signing of a big war that was going on and really affecting the continent of. Think of it, the entire continent of Africa was being affected, and we're settling that war today, and this will probably be a headline. But this is a very big moment, and it gives power back to people that should have it, including Congress, including the presidency. And it only takes bad power away from judges. It really doesn't take power. It takes bad power, sick power, and unfair power. And it's really going to be, this is a very monumental decision. Yeah, please.
Yes, President, thank you very much. On July 9th, is that July 9th date set for tariffs to snap
No.
back? Or could there be a...
We can do whatever we want. We could extend it. We could make it shorter. I'd like to make it shorter. I'd like to just send letters out to everybody. Congratulations, you're paying 25%. He doesn't want. He's a much nicer person than I am. Go ahead. You finish it up.
Who are you considering for the Federal Reserve then? And are you speeding up that process? I see Secretary.
Oh, he's terrible. He's terrible. I mean, I have a list of things. We're like 38 on the list. We pay,
Jerome Powell. I think it's
Cameroon and
Jerome
different places
Powell.
are paying the same as us. Because, you have somebody sets a rate at 4% or 4.5%. It's hard to go out and say we should be paying 1% when you have your so-called experts doing that. And the sad part is, as per the question that you asked about tariffs, we've had the tariffs and we have less inflation than we had before. What we have is a hell of a lot more money, a hell of a lot more income, and we shouldn't be paying a rate like that. In other words, when we pay a rate, I'll tell you, each point is the equivalent of $300 billion. So if we had it down 3 points, because I think we should be at 1, you have Switzerland is at 0.25. In other words, 25% of 1%. And they're the number 1 right now. But we should be the number 1. And soon you're going to have, I think, you're going to have where the people will pay will pay, like we had a few years ago,
One of his microphone
where you
phones
put up
cut out.
money, you loan money,
like.
and I mean, you actually, instead of paying, you get paid. I love that. I don't know if it's any good, but I love it, where you put up money and you get paid. But we should be in a category, so we should be at the top of the list, not toward the bottom of the list. But we have a man who's not a smart man, and he probably has Trump derangement syndrome. And he's just not a smart person. What he's doing, though, he's hurting us for years to come. Because if we borrow money at 2 points higher than we should be paying, that's $600 billion. Wouldn't you say those numbers are about right, Scott? So it's 2 points would be about 600, actually more than that, but about $600 billion. All because the guy doesn't want to lower the rates. He is doing the service, a very disservice. And then he goes up and talks about, I'd like to see costs come down. He gets up and he does his little thing for 5 minutes, and he goes out and he goes back to the beach. He goes, I'd like to see costs come down. Well, he could lower the interest cost by $900 billion a year. All he has to do is lower rates. And everybody's saying, I was watching some of the business shows today, and they're saying, Trump's right. He should really be cutting. The country's doing well. We have no inflation. Now, despite him, we're doing great. But if we got the rates down, we would be a rocket ship. So I think that'll be it. And I just want to thank everybody. This is a really big day. We've had a big week. We've had a big week. We've had a lot of victories this week. NATO was a tremendous victory. The war was a tremendous. Look, we were talking about this for 30 years, about Iran being nuclear. And all I said is it will not be nuclear, and it's not going to be nuclear.
Trump has been winning a lot lately.
And, I want to give credit to a lot of people. Most importantly, to our great military. Boy, they put out that fire. Once that happened, once those bombs got dropped, that war was over. That war was over. But I just want to compliment them. Incredible. The general and all of his generals. Pete Hegseth was great. They were all. And now I want to compliment Pam. A lot of genius went into this. People if you don't say it exactly right, if the Supreme Court doesn't get it because it's incorrectly spoken about, and that happens. A lot of cases are lost because they don't say the right words. But I want to correct. She's going to go down as a great attorney general. I may change my mind about that. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll have call and say I was only kidding. She's going to go down as a great attorney general. This was a tremendous win, and we've had tremendous wins.
She's got to release those damn files. Release the files.
So I just want to congratulate you and Todd and your whole staff.
Pam Bondi, release the files.
Who is with, there's a medical emergency within his family, so he's taking care of that, and we said absolutely. So I just want to thank everybody very much. Thank you.
Oh, that's going to be it here, folks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was President Trump's little press conference here talking about folks, I can't even begin to explain to you how important today's Supreme Court ruling is. This is one of the most colossal, monumental Supreme Court rulings this country has ever seen. We have a lot of new breaking news that has come out over the last half hour during that press conference. We're going to go through all of it. I want to give you the background. I want to really explain just what all of this means and why it is so important. That is the objective of today's live broadcast. Also, right now, the far left radical progressives are in a complete and total meltdown mode. So we're going to take a look. It's going to be a little bit silly. We're going to see how they are reacting. They are flipping out. Okay, now first, I do want to say, if you are new, do me a favor and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Please like the broadcast also. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into this, folks. The Supreme Court today, I'm trying to find my proper image here. Let's kick things off like this. Folks, just 2.5 hours ago, the Supreme Court issued one of the biggest rulings in American history. In a highly anticipated decision, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a 6-3 decision to limit the lower federal court's power to block presidential orders, handing, it says, a partial win. This is a massive win to President Trump. So, as you all know, over the last couple months, President Trump has been in the White House for 6 months now, just about. President Trump has issued executive order after executive order, as presidents tend to do. President Trump is trying to do his job that we all elected him to do. And every single time he's tried to do anything, a radically progressive member of the federal judiciary has stepped in and issued called a universal injunction. A universal injunction is a nationally sweeping universal injunction, a ruling that is designed to shut down everything President Trump has been doing. Now, to give you a little bit of perspective on just how bad this problem has gotten, in the entirety of the 20th century, there were only 27 universal injunctions filed by federal judges. In just the last 6 months, there have been over 100. Do you understand that? In the 20th century, 100 years, there were 27 universal injunctions. In the last 6 months, since President Trump has gotten back in the White House, they have filed over 100. They are overstepping their judicial bounds, these radically progressive federal judges, to try to strip President Trump of his executive authority that's really granted to him by the U.S. Constitution. Now, why is this happening? Well, we have a clip from Chuck Schumer. I want to explain why. This is all part of the Democrats' intentional and explicit plan to undermine President Trump, the democratic will of the American people, and the America First agenda. This is all part of the plan. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this. I'm going to turn up the audio here a little bit. You're not going to believe this. This is a clip from Chuck Schumer from maybe 4 months ago.
There are those who believe that we are in real time living through an assault on the constitutional order. Do you believe that we are in a constitutional crisis right now?
Yes, our democracy is at risk because Donald Trump shows that he wishes to violate the laws in many, many different ways. The good news here is we did put 235 judges, progressive judges, judges not under the control of Trump last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time.
Folks, this is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer just coming out and saying blatantly, openly, admitting to it. He said this 4 months ago, that in the final year of the Joe Biden presidency, the Democrats abused their power. They appointed specifically for the sole and exclusive purpose of undermining President Trump should he win at this point, they didn't know if he was going to win. He did. He's in the White House. But to prepare for the possibility of a Trump victory, of a new second Trump administration, they appointed 235 radically progressive judges for the sole and exclusive purpose of undermining President Trump and the democratic will of the people. And so guess what? Their plan has worked. It has worked very well up until today. The Supreme Court got involved and said, guess what? These nationally sweeping universal injunctions are done. We are shutting them down. It is over. Now, there's another little bonus to this. Okay, folks, over the last couple months, President Trump has been signing executive order, and as you know, this is the point, a lot of them have been shut down by these national sweeping federal universal injunctions. Well, guess what? All of the all of these executive orders that have been shut down over the last couple months as a consequence of these universal injunctions, guess what? Now they are in full effect. So now we have a bunch of new executive orders on the books by default, by nature of these universal injunctions getting tossed out by the Supreme Court ruling. Okay, so guess what? As of today, birthright citizenship is done. Now, a little bit of nuance here. This is kind of hard to explain. The Supreme Court did not directly rule on a lot of these things explicitly today. What the Supreme Court did is say the lower federal courts cannot rule on them. Okay, so birthright citizenship, the Supreme Court didn't themselves say that birthright citizenship is done. All they said is that President Trump's executive order stands and the lower courts can't overturn the president's executive order. Now, in October, according to Attorney General Pam Bondi, in October, 3.5 months from now, the Supreme Court is going to issue a ruling directly related to birthright citizenship. But until then, if you are the baby of an illegal alien in this country being born, an anchor baby, they call them, you're not getting citizenship. Birthright citizenship is done for the next 3.5 months until the Supreme Court actually issues a firm, concrete ruling on this. That's how a lot of this works. What this Supreme Court ruling today does is say President Trump's executive orders are the law of the land until the Supreme Court issues a direct ruling directly related to them. And now we've had a lot of super chats today. I want to say thank you. Today is, guys, ladies and gentlemen, today is a massive day. Okay. Right now, we're going to talk about this here pretty soon. There is a massive progressive liberal far left radical meltdown. They are losing their minds. They know that they have just been delivered a critical blow. I don't know if I'd call it a fatal blow. Unfortunately, they're still around. But listen, they have taken this Supreme Court ruling is the progressive left's worst nightmare. Okay, this is a massive win for the America First agenda, a massive win for patriotic Americans, a massive win for President Trump. Let's keep reading. So, as a consequence of this executive order, birthright citizenship is gone for the time being. The suspension of President Trump's refugee resettlement program, kicking them out of the country and deporting them to third-party countries, is back in effect. He can do that. President Trump issued tens of billions of dollars worth of federal funding freezes for unnecessary baloney, DEI bullcrap. Okay, guess what? That is also back in effect. President Trump, he's the president. If he wants to freeze federal funding, he can do that. President Trump also can now go forward with ending the funding for sanctuary cities. He tried to do that. The radically progressive federal judiciary shut him down. Guess what? He's the president. Judge Boasberg, okay, he can do it if he wants. Sanctuary cities are on the chopping block. He can also stop taxpayer funds for transgender surgeries. President Trump doesn't want that anymore. Your taxpayer money should not be spent on hormone therapy or transgender surgeries for kids or anybody across the country. Okay, guess what? President Trump is going to ban that. He has. That's what the executive order did. Let's keep moving on here. Okay. This is a Fox News report that came out. Folks, there are all types of these executive orders that are now in full effect, and we're going to unpackage all of this throughout the day. We have a Fox News video here. Take a look at this.
We were, Dana. So this brought together a coalition of parents of different religious faiths and backgrounds who said there used to be a rule in this particular school district that would let them know when there were books that dealt with issues that may be in conflict with their religious faith. Well, so many parents were opting out that the school board and the school district quit doing it. Well, 6-3 today in a decision by Justice Alito, they said these parents have earned at least a preliminary injunction. So while this case plays out,
Now, by the way, this is another different Supreme Court case today. But also, what is the essence here? We'll talk about it after. Let's play the video.
They said the board has to notify them about a book that's in question or anything similar so that their kids can be excused if it's in conflict with their faith. He says, as we've explained, without that, parents are left this choice: either risk their child's exposure to burdensome instruction or pay substantial sums for alternative educational services. Because at one point, Justice Jackson, during the arguments, had said, why don't they just go to a different school? Why don't you put them in private school or homeschool?
I'm not kidding. I made a video about that probably a month and a half ago. Justice Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson, we're going to talk a lot about her today because she got absolutely obliterated by Amy Coney Barrett in a scathing write-up. The entire country hates Ketanji Brown Jackson. Ketanji Brown Jackson a month and a half ago said, listen, if you don't want your child being taught how to have homosexual intercourse in the 2nd grade, and I'm not being hyperbolic, like that is what is inside a lot of these books, then you just send your kid to a different school. Just homeschool your child if you don't want homosexual books like this in the public school system. Just have your kid drop out of school if you don't like it. That was her answer to this. Well, guess what, Ketanji? Guess what, Ketanji? You're out, and so are the books.
Them, Justice Alito and others saying that's not practical for a lot of people. The dissent by Justice Sotomayor, joined by Justices Kagan and Jackson, says today's ruling threatens the essence of public education. She says it's not about bringing kids together to learn about a particular faith, but a range of concepts and views that reflect our entire society. Exposure to new ideas has always been a vital part of that project until now.
Exposure to new ideas. Listen, folks, so to be very clear, what this is a different, so the Supreme Court passed numerous rulings. This is one of them. Right now, if you have a problem with your school having this type of literature in the schools, you can have your kid not attend those classes. Okay, you've got the right to do that. Now, about a year and a half ago, I was curious. Everybody's talking about all of these pride books, homosexual books in the schools. And I was a year and a half ago, I was like, man, okay, how bad is it really? How bad are these books? Boy, what a mistake. I stumbled upon Florida State's banned book list. Florida State has banned a bunch of these just profane, disgusting, sexually explicit homosexual books. And I was able to find a list of the books, and also I found an online copy of the books also. So I open up all of these books on this Florida banned book list that are publicly available on the internet. And these are books that they want 9-year-olds reading. They're supposed to be in classrooms for 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade school, elementary school kids. And I'm flipping through the pages of these books. Guys, these books are disgusting. These books are like, If I were to explain to you what I saw in these books, I might get banned on YouTube. YouTube would not let me show you what's in these books. They are explicit, they are graphic, they're picture books. It's like explicit images of how to have different types of intercourse. And I'm thinking about this. How insane is this? They want this stuff in the elementary school classrooms, but also if I, as an adult, were to show this on YouTube, my account would be suspended because they are that graphic. They are disgusting. Okay, so this is the type of stuff that we're talking about. Now, we have a great breakdown of this entire situation. This is a good overview. Take a look at this.
So the real kind of question that we got an answer to today isn't about whether or not the 14th Amendment citizenship clause requires birthright citizenship for the children of illegal aliens. I hope that we get an answer on that in the next few years, to be clear.
October.
But the opinion today really only deals with the issue of so-called nationwide injunctions. And it's a 6-3 ruling. It's written by Amy Coney Barrett, who I've definitely been critical of at times. Certainly my Article 3 Project colleague, Mike Davis, has been quite critical as well. But it's a solid opinion. And, you know, she does not go the full way. This is not a fulsome, here's what the Article 3 judicial power of the Constitution says, here's what it does not say. It is not that. That is what I wanted, and hopefully we get that in the years to come. But it is a solid victory nonetheless. It effectively says that the notion that there is a power of a court to issue a sprawling universal injunction to bind anyone throughout the country is not a power that exists. It is ahistorical. It is not the kind of thing that existed in the courts of equity back in medieval England. It's not the kind of thing that was adapted into the Constitution in the Judiciary Act of 1789. And probably even more kind of mouth-watering, I might say, is just the really dripping with disdain language that Amy Coney Barrett has for Ketanji Brown Jackson, the lead dissenter here.
A lot of people are critical of Amy Coney Barrett. I have made multiple videos criticizing Amy Coney Barrett. I'm not her biggest fan. I must give credit where credit is due. Amy Coney Barrett voted on the, I'll call it the right side of history today. She sided with the majority to shut down these nationally sweeping universal injunctions. She did the right thing today. And also, do I have this up for you guys to show you right here? Where is it? She wrote up a very long, detailed write-up explaining the thought process behind this decision. She, like it says right here, Amy Coney Barrett today absolutely torched Ketanji Brown Jackson. She did not mince her words. She effectively called Ketanji Brown Jackson a moron, an idiot. And we are going to read through that here pretty soon. You guys are going to like that. Let's finish this first, though.
She accuses Ketanji Brown Jackson of opposing an imperial executive branch but worshiping an imperial judiciary. This is pretty fiery language for Amy Coney Barrett, who's not necessarily always the fieriest of the justices on the court there. So there's a lot of good stuff in here. It is a strong partial victory for the Trump administration there, and I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out from here.
This is a massive, colossal victory. What this does is it finally gives executive power back to the CEO, the chief executive of the country, who is who? President Donald J. Trump. We voted for him. And now, honestly, folks, like, this ruling is so massive that it's almost as if this is a second election victory. It's like, yeah, President Trump has been our president for the last 6 months, but now finally he can actually do his job as the president. It's almost like he's becoming president again, because for the first 6 months, he was barely able to even do his job with the overreach out of the federal judiciary. It's almost like we have a new president again, because now he can finally actually do the job that we voted for him to do. And as a little bit of a further explanation here, this is what has been going on, folks. I believe we have 95 federal judicial districts in this country. Okay, you can see you've got these bigger districts, you've got smaller districts. See these little lines going through some of the states here? Okay, different districts all across the country. Oklahoma, Texas has all different. Okay, now, folks, what has been going on? You have radically progressive federal judges in the federal judiciary that have been planted there by the Democrats for the sole and exclusive purpose of undermining President Trump. You have radically progressive federal judges from, I don't know, this district over here in California telling President Trump that he can't do this over here, or that that the governor of Texas can't do this over there, or that somebody in Florida can't do that over there. They have been egregiously overstepping their boundaries. And so what the Supreme Court ruling does is say, listen, you are in this district, you need to focus on your own district. You are the judge, you're the federal judge of this district over here in California. You need to focus on your own district. In fact, not only that, you have you don't even have the ability to issue a ruling in a district in West Virginia. You're a district federal judge from California. What are you doing? Okay, that is what this does. This is massive. So I'm going to read this again. President Trump on Truth Social said earlier today, giant win in the United States Supreme Court. Even the birthright citizenship hoax has been indirectly hit hard. It had to do with the babies of slaves in the same year, not the scamming of our immigration process. Congratulations to Attorney General Pam Bondi, Solicitor General John Sauer, and the entire DOJ news conference. We watched the news conference. Okay, folks, what I want to do now, I want to read you the scathing report released from Amy Coney Barrett. What did she have to say about Ketanji Brown Jackson? Take a look at this. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. This is Amy Coney Barrett that wrote this, folks. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive, President Trump, while also embracing an imperial judiciary. So Amy Coney Barrett here is directly saying For as much as Justice Jackson is complaining and whining about President Trump being a dictator, she is effectively making a dictatorship out of the federal judiciary. That's what Coney Barrett is saying here. No one disputes that the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so. I'm going to skip down here. Look at this. This is the bombshell. Justice Jackson skips over that part because analyzing the government statute involves boring legalese. Justice Jackson seeks to answer, quote, a far more basic question of enormous practical significance. May a federal court... Folks, she is effectively saying that Justice Jackson is too stupid, too incompetent, too low IQ to really understand the proper way that this is supposed to function because it's quote boring legalese. That is what she's saying. Also, if you are spamming my live chat, stop doing that. Thank you. Anyway, this is just a bombshell on Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson that's been dropped on her. Oh my gosh. Amy Coney Barrett goes on to say, Justice Jackson would do well to heed her own admonition. Quote, everyone from the president on down is bound by law. That goes for the judges too. So what did Amy Coney Barrett here say? She said that Justice Jackson is trampling all over 200 years worth of legal precedent. She's saying that Justice Jackson is in direct conflict with the Constitution itself. She's saying that the reason why Justice Jackson doesn't know what she's doing is because she's too stupid and she can't grasp any of this because it's boring legalese. And she's also saying that, hey, listen, Justice Jackson, you should pay attention to what you yourself said, is that, listen, not just the president, but judges are bound by law too, is what Amy Coney Barrett said. This is scorched earth. And of course, you know, we have our issues with Amy Coney Barrett, but she really just dropped a bombshell on her. Now, folks, you're going to think this is funny. We had a report come out. If you're on the Supreme Court, if you're one of these Supreme Court justices, I imagine you are just annoyed as hell with dealing. Imagine you got to go to work every single day and deal with Ketanji Brown Jackson. Take a look at this. Ketanji Brown Jackson spoke significantly more than any other Supreme Court justice during oral arguments in 2023. Folks, this is how much, this is a bar graph indicating how much every Supreme Court justice spoke during the year of 2023. Take a look at this. Ketanji Brown Jackson is just yapping. She's yapping all day. She's yapping 2 or 3 times more than every other Supreme Court justice. Compare her to Justice Clarence Thomas down here in the bottom right. Clarence Thomas, he spoke probably 1/5 or 1/6 as much as Ketanji Brown Jackson. And the hilarious thing is, she's, you know, according to Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Jackson doesn't even know what she's saying. She's in direct conflict with the Constitution. It's all boring legalese. And as we know, listen, this is not my speculation. This is what Joe Biden explicitly said on the 2020 campaign trail. He said, remember, Joe Biden explicitly said this. He said, if you vote for me in the 2020 election, I promise you I will appoint a black woman to the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, and then what did he do? He appointed a black woman to the U.S. Supreme Court. So, folks, black women are 6%, maybe 5% of the U.S. population. This is DEI. Joe Biden on the 2020 campaign trail said, listen, if you vote for me, I'm going to ignore 95% of the U.S. population because they are the wrong race and the wrong gender. Instead, I'm going to focus on 5% of the U.S. population, black women, and I'm going to pick one of them to be on the Supreme Court by nature of their race and their gender. Okay, this is what he campaigned on, and he did it. She is explicitly, according to Joe Biden, who appointed her. Maybe it was the auto pen. I don't know. This is DEI, and this is a problem. This is a massive problem. In fact, this is one of the big talking points right now, is that she is Was she even appointed by Joe Biden, or was she appointed by the auto pen? Everybody's talking about auto pen right now. Who appointed her? Joe Biden or the auto pen? Daily reminder that Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court commission was auto penned for a person who lacked the mental capacity to do so and is therefore illegitimate. Does anybody know about this? Listen, this is how the U.S. works across the country. Someone that is mentally or cognitively impaired is not legally allowed to sign a contract. They cannot sign a contract. Okay, and so this is one of the arguments right now is that, listen, because Joe Biden's mental capacity was so deteriorated during all of this auto pen stuff going on, maybe even during Ketanji Brown Jackson's appointment, that that her appointment might actually be illegitimate because it was an auto pen and Joe Biden's mental state was so deteriorated. Maybe she's an illegitimate Supreme Court justice because of that. I think so. I would bet so. Now, I'm sure you're wondering who are the three U.S. Supreme Court justices who voted in opposition today to further empower the radically progressive federal judiciary. It was a 6-3 decision. Who are the three? Well, these are the three. Here are your three. So if anybody is wondering, this is Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and why am I blanking on her name right now? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, these are the three Supreme Court justices. Now, right now we have a radical progressive meltdown that I want to run through with you folks. First off, let's check in on David Hogg. David Hogg, who just got kicked out as the DNC vice chair. He took to Twitter today. Kagan, thank you. David Hogg says, F the Supreme Court, F the Federalist Society, and F Mitch McConnell. So it's funny because the Democrats, the radical progressives, they love the legal system as long as it is doing their bidding, as long as the legal system is being weaponized by them to trample on American citizens, to subvert the democratic will of the people, to trample on the U.S. Constitution. They love the legal system. Now that the Supreme Court is not doing what they want, now that the judicial system is not doing what they want, now it's F this, F that, F this, F that. F the Supreme Court, F the Federalist Society. What is the Federalist Society? The Federalist Society is a legal group that is aiming to push the judiciary across the country to interpret the Constitution as it was meant to be interpreted. Okay, this is a constitutionalist legal group. So he's saying F the Federalist Society, whose only purpose is proper constitutional interpretation. That is their objective. Okay, so F interpreting the Constitution as our founding fathers wanted us to. F that, and also F Mitch McConnell. I'm trying to think, what does Mitch McConnell have to do with this? Presumably he's mad at Mitch McConnell because of what he did in 2015, 10 years ago. Remember in 2015 when Joe Biden was trying to appoint one more Supreme Court justice and Mitch McConnell shut that down? Presumably that is probably why he's mad, maybe, but I don't know. Anyway, the the point is they are melting down. The point is they are melting down. Let me turn my headset back on here. But that's not all. We have more to take a look at here, folks. We are just getting going. Let's check in. We have a short clip from CNN. Let me take a look here. Okay, Karen C4 says with the super chat, thank you very much. Just a side note, a person of diminished mental capacity cannot sign any legal document, not just contracts. There you go. Thank you, Karen. We have an expert. You know more than me. Thank you. Thank you. She's a retired paralegal. Thank you, Karen. And Karen knows. There you have it. And so, hey, listen, is Ketanji Brown Jackson a legitimate Supreme Court justice? I don't know. And by the way, this is not just me yapping here. President Trump's legal team, well, it's not his legal team. It's the Department of Justice, to be clear. They are actively pursuing this line of inquisition. They are looking into this. They are looking into whether or not Joe Biden's mental state was diminished, like Karen says, and whether or not all of his auto pen stuff, the Supreme Court appointments, whether or not this stuff is legitimate or illegitimate. So I'm not out here just speculating and yapping. The DOJ right now is looking into this entire line of thought. CNN.
Here's what we know. This is a big win for President Trump because he has been railing against the so-called nationwide injunctions. This is the power of a single judge to block an executive order for the entire country. And this case came up as a result of multiple challenges to his effort to limit birthright citizenship through an executive order. Now, here it appears that the justices are agreeing with Trump and limiting this power that judges have to block a policy for the entire country.
That is right. So even CNN has to acknowledge this is a massive victory for President Trump, and they are pissed. Folks, real quick, Grandpa Barney with the big super chat. Thank you. That lollipop liquor did not win the 2020 anyway. Fire her and Powell together. There you have it. Hey. President Trump has said he's probably not going to fire Jerome Powell. Maybe we have another 12 or 13 months of him before he's gone. I don't know. It seems like President Trump is getting a little bit sick of him, though. Maybe that changes here pretty soon. We have an update from Senator John Kennedy, Republican. Let's see what he has to say about this.
It certainly appears in many instances that this is continuing to be lawfare against the current president, and it's not supposed to be that way. I mean, the scales of justice are not supposed to tip politically one way or the other. Why do you think we're seeing what we're seeing against Trump?
Well, both sides have abused it, and by it I mean universal injunctions. The Democrats more than the Republicans, but both.
Listen, yes, it is true. Both sides have abused universal injunctions. Okay, fair. But let's talk about magnitude here. Okay, for every one abusive universal injunction that the Republicans have filed in the last 20 years or 25 years, or like, let's just say ever, there have been 10 or 15 or 20 abusive federal nationally sweeping universal injunctions from the Democrats. Okay. Yes, technically what he's saying is right, but the order of scale, the magnitude is unparalleled.
Sides have abused it, and it's illegal. There's no basis for it in law, and I've just been waiting for the Supreme Court to do this. I mean, anybody who knows a law book from an LL Bean catalog knows that federal judges just made up this concept of universal injunctions. There's no basis in statute, no basis in Supreme Court precedent. There's no basis in English common law. They just made it up because they don't agree with what a president or Congress has done. You know, if they disagree, I'm sorry. Fill out a hurt feelings report, buy a comfort rock. But they can't just say, I disagree and I'm putting the entire action by another branch of government on hold because I don't like it. And that's what they've been doing. And they're not the superior branch of government. They're an equal branch of government.
And there you have it. And like he says, they are an equal branch of government, which means they have no right to overstep their judicial boundary and impede on the president's executive authority. If he doesn't have that, what does he have? I mean, folks, listen, guys, these radical progressives over the last 6 months, they have tried to say, okay, President Trump, you don't get to file executive orders. You don't get to issue tariffs. You don't get to shut down the border. You don't get to enforce currently standing federal immigration legislation. You don't get to deport illegal aliens. You don't get to send illegal aliens back to the country that they came from. You don't get to, yeah, you might be the president, but you don't get to do anything. You don't get to engage in trade negotiations with any other country on earth. They have tried to strip every single function out of the presidency because they don't like President Trump. It's nuts. It is nuts. And now they have just been delivered a critical blow. Now, allegedly here, folks, I want to show y'all something. I don't, to be honest with you, I don't really know what we're in for here. So, bear with me, but I see this here. This is an 8-minute long clip coming out of MSNBC, MSDNC is what we call it. They are melting down. I love this. Okay, this clip here is going viral. I want to take a look what they have to say at MSDNC. Everybody get ready for your meltdown. Get some popcorn. Here we go.
Not able to issue nationwide injunctions.
Okay, thank you. Stand by, and I know you want to dig into the case, so we'll let you do that. Julia, I'm going to bring in Lisa Rubin. You just pulled it up. What are we learning?
We're learning today that the court, by a 6-3 majority, Anna, has decided to stay the injunctions partially. They're saying that they will grant the government's application for stays, but only to the extent that the injunctions are broader than necessary to provide complete relief to each plaintiff with standing to sue. And let me go back
all of them
a second, zoom out for a second if I can. One of the questions here was, if the court was going to stay these injunctions, how were they going to do it? Were they going to say that each injunction could only apply in the district where it was entered? In 2 cases here, those districts were actually statewide, the District of New Jersey, the District of Massachusetts. But the other question was, or could you limit it to just the plaintiffs in these particular cases? Remember that 2 of these 3 cases are brought by states. So how this changes that result, what does it mean then when the individual plaintiffs who have standing to sue are states? Does that mean that we're going to get sort of a patchwork result as one of...
Well, guess what? As it would turn out, the state of California, for instance, has no capacity to issue a federal injunction on whether or not President Trump tries to deport illegal aliens or shut down funding going towards some university. Doesn't matter. Too bad.
Of the attorneys general, Matt Platkin of New Jersey, described to me in an interview earlier this year. Does that mean that citizenship could be conferred solely by an accident of birth? And he described to me a situation where a citizen or a resident of his state gives birth over a state line in Pennsylvania, for example. What happens if a New Jersey resident gives birth in Pennsylvania? New Jersey is a plaintiff to these cases. Pennsylvania is not. If the child to 2 undocumented immigrants is born in Pennsylvania, what is the result with respect to that person's citizenship? These are a bunch of questions that are...
This is what I want. I want a retroactive revocation of birthright citizenship. Now, are we ever going to get that? Frankly, no, I don't think so. I'm not holding my breath. But folks, could you imagine if every single birthright citizenship anchor baby situation over the past 80 years, 50 years, 20 years, if all of that was revoked and reneged, could you imagine? So let's say you had an anchor baby pop up here, the child of illegal alien invaders 15 years ago. Guess what? You might have been here for the last 15 years. You are gone. You and your parents, all of you are gone, revoked, get out of town.
Are now going to result. But at the very least, we are going to see a circumstance where the president's executive order curtailing birthright citizenship is going to effectively be allowed to be implemented in certain states, but not in others.
Okay, so Leah Littman, what does this mean for Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship? Is it now in effect in certain places, just not in the places that initially were where these cases were brought?
So unfortunately, that is going to be worked out by the lower courts on remand, because what the Republican justices decided is, as to the individual plaintiffs who filed suit, courts cannot award them nationwide injunctions. That is the only thing courts can give these individual plaintiffs, is a determination that their children would be United States citizens. But as to the states that challenge this executive order, the Supreme Court says, we are not deciding whether a nationwide injunction is necessary to provide the states with complete relief, and therefore they send the case back down to the...
Once again, folks, we are getting a definitive answer, a definitive constitutional Supreme Court interpretation of birthright citizenship in accordance with the 14th Amendment, I believe, in October. In October, we're going to have our definitive, concrete answer whether or not birthright citizenship is constitutional, or can be overturned at least. 3.5 months. 3.5 months, folks. 3.5 months.
Lower courts to make that determination initially. Now, that doesn't mean the executive order is going to go into effect immediately. The executive order indicates that it contains a 30-day period in which the administration will create some sort of guidelines and process to figure out how it will be implemented. And during the oral argument, the Solicitor General said their position is that 30-day period had not started because the lower courts had enjoined the executive order before it went into effect. And so therefore, there will be at least a 30-day period before the executive order is allowed to go into effect. And again, during that period, it's likely that lower courts will be determining whether the states, in order to remedy the harms that this order causes them, can receive nationwide relief. I just want to note the Democratic appointees' strong dissents in this case. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson calls the court's decision an existential threat to the rule of law. Justice Sotomayor's dissent says no right is safe in the new legal regime the court creates. She calls the court complicit in a grave attack on our system of law. The reality is the Supreme
Listen, the federal judiciary, it is not their job to rule on the constitutionality of the president's executive orders or executive authority or executive powers. That is the job of the Supreme Court. They need to do their job. Some random unelected federal judge in a small town in California, some district judge has it. It is not their job to tell the president, hey, you can and cannot do that. Now, real quick, we have a message from Chuck Schumer, who is currently losing his mind as it relates to this topic. Take a look at this. Chuck Schumer, our favorite Palestinian senator, he says, the Supreme Court's decision to limit courts of their long-held authority to block illegal executive actions. Who says they're illegal? Who's to say if President Trump's executive order is illegal? That's not for you to say, Senator Schumer from Palestine. That's not for some district federal judge to decide. That's for the Supreme Court to decide. And that's what this is about. Who, they're illegal executive actions. Says who? Not you and not these federal judges. It's a grave danger to our democracy and a predictable move from this extremist MAGA court. By weakening the power of district courts to check the presidency, the court is not defending the Constitution, it is defacing it. These people are sick in the head. This ruling hands Donald Trump yet another green light in his crusade to unravel the foundations of American democracy. Folks, how many of these federal judges do we have? It's like 200 and something. More than that. It's more than that. There are 95 different districts across the country. Listen, could you, like, this is what Chuck Schumer wants. This is what these three Supreme Court justices want, all three of them that voted against this, Ketanji Brown Jackson, whatever. Listen, they want, in order for the U.S. president to be able to do anything, they want him to check in with all 100 plus 200, 300 federal judges and 280. They want President Trump to ask permission from every single one of the 280 federal judges across the country. Hey, can I do this? Hey, is it okay with you if I do this? Hey, every single one of the 280 federal judges, is it okay if I impose this tariff with you? I just want to check with you. Is it okay if I try to deport this person? Is it okay? Every single thing. That is the system that they are pushing for right now. It is nuts. His plan to end birthright citizenship is blatantly unconstitutional, but instead of stopping it in its tracks, the court has instead ducked the question and bowed to an out-of-control executive branch. They're not ducking it 3.5 months. In 3.5 months, we are going to know explicitly what is the deal with birthright citizenship. We're going to have our answer here.
Supreme Court's Republican justices took away lower courts' single powerful tool, the most powerful tool for reining in the Trump administration.
Good.
And holding them accountable to the law.
They never had the tool to begin with.
Chuck, let me get your reaction. This sounds like a giant win for the Trump administration.
It sure does. And also, by the way, if you guys would do me a favor, if you are new, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Thank you guys very much. It's a big deal. Lohash says, which part did you not understand? The buh or the bye? The bye or the buh? True.
And could likely trigger chaos now across the country.
Well, let me address the second point first, Anna. And since you have Leah and Lisa on, I'm not sure why you would ask me anything. They're both way smarter than me, but it strikes me.
You're all brilliant.
No, well, I'll prove otherwise in a moment, Anna. But
this is like, I'm sorry, I have to comment on this. This is typical white guy on the left. Well, I'm just a stupid white man. I just don't know anything. Everybody's smarter than me. This like the typical self-hating, self-deprecating leftist white guy. Well, I don't know why you're asking me. I'm just a stupid man, a stupid white man. You should be like, it's just, ugh.
It strikes me that now individual plaintiffs in almost 100 separate federal judicial districts can seek individual relief. If a federal district court judge in Seattle can't enjoin nationwide President Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship, but could only do so in the Western District of Washington where he sits, then similarly situated plaintiffs, women who would give birth to a child who would otherwise be a U.S. citizen, could bring suit in Maine and in Vermont and in the Northern District of Florida and everywhere in the country. And right now you have, in my view, binding Supreme Court precedent from an 1898 case that says these women would win. This is a procedural decision from the Supreme Court. It's not a substantive decision on the underlying executive order. It does strip from federal judges on.
So this is how they are handling this. They're trying to say, listen, this is not a win for President Trump. Do not panic, my fellow radical progressives. They didn't issue a ruling on birthright citizenship. Do not worry about that. All this is a procedural decision. So it's not that big of a, okay, well, hold up. What are the implications of this procedural decision? The implications are that the radically progressive federal judiciary has no right, no legal capacity to impede on the president's executive function. You lose. You lose. This has been your plan. You have been explicitly talking about this. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer laid this out 4 months ago on video. Their plan was to load up the federal court system with as many radically anti-Trump progressive judges as they possibly could to undermine and subvert every single thing he tried to do, to overstep judicial boundaries, to impede his executive authority, and to wipe their ass with the Constitution. Guess what? You lose. It is up. The jig is up. And so, yeah, it's going to be another 3.5 months until we know exactly what's up with birthright citizenship. But guess what? It doesn't, that's a different topic. You lose. The weaponization of the federal judiciary is over.
A lot of power that was exercised increasingly over the last 2, 3, 4 decades against presidents of both parties. And it was clear to me from the argument that a number of the more conservative justices were going to go exactly this way, that they were opposed to this notion of a single federal judge having nationwide injunctive powers. They didn't like the notion of judge shopping, that an aggrieved plaintiff would bring a case in a district that best suited him or her. But will there be more chaos? There'll be more cases, Anna, and whether or not you think of that as chaos, I'll leave that to you. But I think more individual plaintiffs will bring more individual cases seeking similar relief.
Well, the reason I ask Chuck about the chaos is I'm trying to envision a situation in which you have to have a case, you have to bring your own case in order to get the relief, right? So if you are a person who is in this country right now in a state that wants to enforce Trump's executive order.
She has a very long neck. She has a very, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Sorry, that's rude. I apologize. That's rude. I'm sorry for saying that.
Banning birthright citizenship, and you're an immigrant and you have a child. What does that mean for this child in that state compared to what it means for a child who's born in another state?
Right. So right now, arguably, children in certain states, and I think this was Lisa's point, have protections that children in other states in 30 days may not. And I take your point, Anna. It's going to require other plaintiffs to come forward and to seek injunctive relief. It doesn't mean everybody in the Northern District of Florida or in the Western District of Texas or in the Eastern District of New York has to file a lawsuit. But it does mean that lawsuits have to be filed in all of these jurisdictions because you no longer, at least according to the Supreme Court, for individual plaintiffs, have nationwide injunctive relief available to similarly situated plaintiffs.
The nationwide, the universal injunctions, the nationally sweeping universal injunctions are done.
Early situated mothers and their children. And so, yes, it invites a lot more litigation in a lot more places, and I think perhaps fairly characterized as more chaos.
I mean, even Justice Kavanaugh asked during the oral arguments, what do hospitals do with a newborn? What do states do with a newborn? Justice Gorsuch pointed at the patchwork problem that this could create. Leah, is there any resolution that is within this opinion that you're reading through?
I think this opinion is going to create additional legal questions for lower court.
There you have it. I want to take a look at these super chats here real quick. Palestinian Senator Chuck Schumer, thanks for all that you do. Matt, enjoy the daily streams. Make America great again, folks. We are so back. We are back. We are so back. We are so beyond back. It has been a solid week of win after win after win. Everybody post a W in the chat. This is what all the kids do these days. They post a W in the chat. Everybody W in the chat for win. We are just winning nonstop. Everybody was fear-mongering over World War III, war in Iran, a military invasion, boots on the ground. Guess what? Not happening. The Supreme Court just shot down universal injunctions. We have an official ruling in 3.5 months on birthright citizenship. That might be gone too, folks. It is win after win. The economy is on fire. President Trump was in Europe 3 days ago. The European Union completely surrendered and capitulated to President Trump's authority. Daddy is back, as he said. We are so back. We are on top. We are so incredibly back. www.makeamericagreatagain.com. That's how many W's it is. Nonstop winning. Now, we have a little bit of a snippet over here coming in from Fox News. Take a look.
Let's start with nationwide injunctions by these district judges. Where are we on that after this ruling?
They're dead. 100% dead.
They are dead. Today we're having the funeral. This is the funeral service. Oh, universal injunctions. You were so young. You had so much potential, universal injunctions. How you will be. Just kidding. I'm spitting. I'm sorry. That's also rude. I'm sorry. That's rude. Sorry. You shouldn't joke about that.
The Supreme Court has said now definitively district judges, of which there are about 700 around the country in every major city, they can decide the cases before them. They can give remedies like injunctions to the parties in the courtroom. But what they can't do is impose it against the government throughout the entire country at once. Really, that's the Supreme Court's job.
Pause. Look at this, folks. Just look at how bad this is. Nationwide injunctions issued by federal district courts against recent presidents. George Bush, he had 3 per term, 6 total. Obama, he had 12 total issued against him, 6 per term. Trump, in his first term in 4 years, he had 64 nationally sweeping universal injunctions filed against him. Biden had 22 against him in 4 years. Trump, now, he's only been in office for 6 months. This is his second term. He's got 40 of them already. Trump has, add them all up. He's got, I can't do math. Listen, I haven't had my coffee this morning. It's like 10 or 20 times more universal, probably 10 times more than the other 3 presidents combined. I don't know, something, anyway, five, probably 5, maybe 4 times more combined, add them up. Probably 4 times. Okay. This is not, the point is, math aside, I didn't bring my TI 89 graphing calculator. This is nuts.
And so what the court has said is, yes, it's going to be possible now for the birthright citizenship order to be struck down in Boston, but still upheld in Texas. That it might still be possible for people to get passports in Boston who might not get them in Texas. But that's the job of the Supreme Court to resolve that conflict. It's not the job of any individual district trial judge to do. So this is a really big win for the presidency, not just Donald Trump, but the presidency. Because what the court has also respected here is that the president is elected by the American people to carry out an agenda, and it's important and right for him to be able to pursue that throughout the country at once.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And as, you know who has got to be happy today? Bear with me here for one moment. Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, I want to see what he has got to say about this. Has he said anything? No, Stephen Miller has been oddly quiet. Stephen Miller has been one of the big voices in the Trump administration railing against the radically progressive federal judiciary, talking about judicial tyranny. He's been saying for months now that if the Supreme Court does not rein these people in, that we don't have a democratic republic, a constitutional republic. We don't have what we have. We have a judicial tyranny. And he is absolutely right. He did retweet this. This is the statement from Amy Coney Barrett. She said, "We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of legal precedent. Not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary." You can tell. Amy Coney Barrett hates Justice Jackson. I want to read this part again at the bottom. Justice Jackson skips over that part because analyzing the government statute involves boring legalese. She's calling her a moron, a low IQ idiot. Amy Coney Barrett is pretty much calling Justice Jackson an idiot, a really stupid person. Boring legalese. She's saying that Justice Jackson can't be bothered with really fully, deeply understanding the situation, the U.S. Constitution, etc., because it's a bunch of boring legalese. Who has time for that? Well, you would think maybe a Supreme Court justice, but no. No, she's too busy watching BET all day. Presumably. Anyway, folks, that is the big news of the day. That is the massive news of the day. Now, we also have one more thing I want to show you. President Trump has issued a new Truth Social post just about 10 minutes ago, and I want to read this with you. Take a look at this. President Trump says this regarding Iran and Israel. Why would the so-called supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, of the war-torn country of Iran, say so blatantly and foolishly that he won the war with Israel when he knows his statement is a lie? It is not so. As a man of great faith, he is not supposed to lie. His country was decimated. His 3 evil nuclear sites were obliterated, and I knew exactly where he was sheltered. And I would not let Israel or the U.S. Armed Forces, by far the greatest and most powerful in the world, terminate his life. He's saying, listen, Khamenei, you're only alive because I allowed you to be alive. I saved you from a very ignominious death, and he does not have to say thank you, President Trump. In fact, in the final act of war, I demanded that Israel bring back a very large group of planes which were headed directly to Tehran looking for a big day, perhaps the final knockout. President Trump is saying that these Iranian jets that were flying over to Tehran that President Trump called back, these Israeli jets that were flying over to Iran, President Trump called them back. He's kind of hinting that they were on their way over to kill Khamenei. That is what he's hinting. President Trump is saying right now, Israel was on its way to kill Khamenei. President Trump said, turn around, go home, it's over. That is what he's saying in essence here. Tremendous damage would have ensued and many Iranians would have been killed. It was going to be the biggest attack of the war by far. During the last few days, I was working on the possible removal of sanctions and other things which would have given a much better chance to Iran at a full, fast, and complete recovery. The sanctions are biting. But no, instead I get hit with a statement of anger, hatred, and disgust, and immediately dropped all the work on sanction relief and more. Iran has to get back into the world order flow, or things will only get worse for them. They are always so angry, hostile, and unhappy, and look at what it has gotten them. A burned out, blown up country with no future, a decimated military, and a horrible economy. And death all around them. They have no hope, and it will only get worse. I wish the leadership of Iran would realize that you often get more with honey than you do with vinegar. Peace. Of course, he meant peace, peace. But I read that as peace. Peace. Peace out, Iran. Peace out. And he's right, and he's right. So President Trump, he's saying that first off, two big takeaways here. He was working on actually sort of building a new bridge with Iran, economically stabilizing Iran, helping to work with them. But because the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been just so rude, frankly, just rude on Twitter, and we looked at some of that yesterday. He's been so rude on Twitter that, maybe Trump maybe he's not in the mood anymore to help Iran economically stabilize. Maybe if they're going to be rude, about it, you're on your own. Yeah, the war's over, but you know what? Good luck. Peace, I guess. And then he also said, this is a massive takeaway here. I noted this a moment ago, but he's pretty much saying that those Israeli jets were on the way to drop their biggest payload on Tehran and also to try to kill Khamenei, and President Trump called off that attack. Of course, we knew that those Israeli jets were flying over. We talked about that. That's old news. President Trump called that off old news. But what were those jets intending to do? What was their objective? To drop their biggest payload yet and to try to kill Khamenei. That is what they are doing, and Trump called it off. We didn't know that. That is a big piece of news, big bombshell. Folks, that is going to be a wrap for today's broadcast. My plan was to actually wake up. I have 2 videos I want to make ready to go, but we had this emergency Supreme Court ruling. I figured I have to go live and talk about it immediately, but now I need to go offline. Now I got to wrap up the broadcast and get to work making my videos for the day. So I need to go do some actual work now, folks. So thank you all very, very much for tuning in. If you are new, please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. That helps a lot. Please like today's broadcast. That helps a ton. Super chats, everybody hanging out and chatting and tuning in. Thank you all very, very much. What a splendid day. Guys, today is a great day. Today really is a good day. Really, we should all be happy. Please follow on Twitter. There's a link to my Twitter page. That also is a big deal. I'm going to go get to work, and later today I'll have some videos for you guys. So thank you all. Have a great afternoon. Watch those videos when I upload them here in a couple hours, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on another live broadcast. So thank you all. Have a great afternoon.